Welcome to Stream of Conscience, brought to you by Democracy for America, Fairfield County, where we believe that change is possible and you can make it happen. I'm your host, John Hartwell. Our guest today is Mark Mathias, founder and co-chair of the Westport Mini Maker Faire, a one-day family-friendly event that celebrates arts, crafts, engineering, science, and technology projects and the do-it-yourself mindset. It's for resourceful, creative people who like to tinker and love to make things. Mark brought the first official Maker Faire event to Connecticut in 2012. He's an information technology executive, the president of the New York CTO Club, and a technology columnist for the Westport News. Mark, welcome to Stream of Conscience.
Good to be here, John.
Mark, what is the Mini Maker Faire?
Oh, it's a great event. It's all about creativity and innovation for people that make things. A lot of it's taking back what used to be, or we are, kind of a consumer economy where people think that whenever they need something, they just go buy it. And it's all about bringing back people who make things, people who make things with electronics, make things with wood, make things with materials like cloth and metal, and even make creative things like performing arts and gardens and things like that. It's all about having people build and make and create.
And really, that's what you think of as being the American trait for centuries now. People creating new things and then moving them into the marketplace, many of them, but I guess probably most of them never go anywhere. What kind of people are coming to the fair? You had one in 2012. Tell me about that one.
Well, the one in 2012 was a huge success by all measures. I discovered the ones in New York that are fairly large, and they've had them for 3 years. There's actually the big one in California that regularly attracts over 110,000 people for a 2-day event. And it's in its 8th year now. Well, in New York, they've had them for 3 years, and they're now over 50,000 people. And after having taken my family to the first one in New York, I said, this is something we have to bring to Connecticut. It's a wonderful event. So I had the idea to do it. I actually went to the library and met some wonderful people there. Bill Derry, whom I've known at the library, and the library said, we'd love to partner with you on this. So we said, let's kind of start small. So we planned for about 800 people.
Is that why it's called the Mini Maker Faire?
Exactly, exactly. And we planned for about 800 people, and we were completely amazed that 2,200 people showed up. And it was just a phenomenal success, and it has spawned a number of initiatives here in the community and statewide that continue to move along at a very, very rapid pace.
Is there a nationwide organization that puts these on, or is it completely do-it-yourself and anybody can do it?
There is actually a Maker Faire called Maker Media organization out of Sebastopol, California, just north of San Francisco, and we license the name from them. But all of the Mini Maker Fairs, of which there are over 50, that's 50, around the world every year, are all independently produced, that the Maker Faire people help you with, providing you with instructions and manuals and whatnot, but it's all completely up to us to put it on. And it's a great event. It's a community event. It's bringing people together, and a lot of people talk about it being geeks getting together and showing off what they do.
Right.
And some of the things people do are just really crazy. We've had people that, in fact, one of the big attractions this last year was a gentleman who built a submarine.
I was going to ask you about that because I'd seen the photograph. A submarine seems a little ambitious.
It is, but what's interesting about it, and this is a personal submarine he built. He's actually spec'd it for 300 feet of depth, and he's taken it down to 200 feet and come up alive. But the beauty of Maker Fairs is you get to see these people who make these things, both small and large. And to me, one of the values of it is that an individual, whether you're 4 years old or 12 years old or 30 years old or 80 years old, you can meet the person and you can say, how did you make this submarine? And this person will tell you, which is very different than reading about it in a book, seeing it on television, seeing it on the internet. You actually get to meet the person or the people who do these things. And it makes it real for people. It's very inspirational, not only for the person who's made a submarine, but for people who want to know about how would you build something like that? Because you don't just order a submarine kit off of the internet.
Sure. Where did he get his design?
Well, a lot of it was helped through people that he knows. I mean, you can kind of buy plans for these things, but it's customized. He had to build it to do certain things that he wanted to do. If you want to have cameras, you have to have a camera mount. Well, he had to build the camera mount. He had to decide how thick is the plexiglass bubble on the front of the submarine, and where do you get a plexiglass bubble to go on the front of the submarine?
You make one with a 3D printer, I'm sure.
Eventually things like that will happen. But it was things like that, and again, another colleague of mine who has a Lost in Space robot, a full-size replica from the television show Lost in Space, who he built it. And other people are doing things like, we had people making terrariums that were essentially gardens in a bottle. We had people that made musical instruments that had done this. We had people making raised bed gardens. We had people that had made flowers out of paper. We had just all sorts of people doing creative things.
It seems to run the gamut from heavy science techno geek to what one would think of as your traditional kind of arts and crafts, gardening, flower arrangement kinds of things.
It is in some ways. And some people say, is it a craft show? Is it a science fair? What is it? And the answer is it's kind of yes, all of those, and no, none of those. Again, we really focus on creativity and innovation and actually doing something yourself. We have a lot of high school students, for example, that built underwater remote operated vehicles, little subs kind of things, if you will. Another student built camera stabilization equipment. So some of it is technology based, some of it's engineering based, but we also had somebody who had made chain mail jewelry. Chain mail like they'd wear in medieval times, but it was jewelry that you would make. And so it's a whole bunch of things. And what we really want to foster is that creativity.
And is it a requirement that the design be yours as opposed to something that you simply bought and put together?
Not really. There's not really a requirement. But a lot of it is, if you bought something and you built it, what have you done to make it your own?
To customize.
Exactly. And that's actually where a lot of the maker mentality comes in, is that people will quite often produce something and they'll say, here's the design. Go ahead and enhance it, add on to it. And the idea is someone will take it, they'll
like open source software.
Exactly. In fact, there's a website on the internet where you can actually take designs that people have created, and you can download them, modify them yourselves, and then print them out on a 3D printer, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But there's the website's called Thingiverse. It's a universe of things.
Got it. Okay.
And you can people can upload designs that they've created. Someone can then download it, modify it, make it what they want it to be, and then they can do whatever they want to with it.
Would this fair have been possible without the internet?
It would be harder, because we actually had people, interestingly enough, we had people through the marketing. The only money we spent on marketing this was some yard signs that we had to purchase. Everything else was done through social media. And we had, again, of the 2,200 people that showed up, we had people from as far away as Rhode Island and Boston that attended the event because they heard about it on the internet or through a magazine or a publication.
Facebook or Twitter or some such.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how did you find the people who were demonstrating what they had done?
All through social media and word of mouth. Once we started to let people know that this event was going to happen, it was amazing how word got out quickly. There are a number of clubs, if you will, here in Connecticut that do this kind of stuff. Sometimes called hacker spaces. And we let them know, and a lot of their people are builders and creators and makers, and so they applied to be makers and participate at the show. And we had a whole bunch of people. The Westport Library was excellent at helping us market it. We actually received remarkably good coverage from the traditional media, newspapers, television, radio, things like that.
Well, they're looking for things to promote to their audience so that people come back and read more.
Absolutely. And this is new. This is something that's really taking people that have an interest or a desire and discovering people of like minds. One of the things that's really neat about these shows is these fairs is you'll go to some of them and someone will have made the craziest idea, like a submarine.
Or a medieval siege device.
Exactly, trebuchets, exactly. And we have those types of things, and people will come up to them and say, why did you make this?
Yes, and the answer is?
It sounded like a really fun thing to do. And so people meet each other that this is an okay thing to do. So instead of something where, well, I'm going to make a product out of it, or this is going to make me a millionaire, or this is going to make me the next internet star. They just do it because it looks like a fun thing. And typically, they do it because it's a creative thing or it's an intellectual challenge. They go, I've seen someone else do it, I'll bet I can do that too.
And you are president of the CTO Council Club in New York. That's the Chief Technology Officers, right?
Exactly.
So did you turn to those people for ideas and support?
We did. Well, a number of people that are members of that club actually got the word out for us. We had some people that showed up because they're technologists, and so the things like the 3D printing and the creative process is very interesting to them.
So let's talk about 3D printing, because we've mentioned it several
Sure.
times, and I know you brought something along to show today that's made with a 3D printer. Before we show that, exactly what is a 3D printer?
Okay. Well, we all have printers. We all have laser printers,
right.
inkjet printers.
Inkjet printers.
Exactly.
We used to have those that actually, were
Dot matrix printers.
Dot
yes,
matrix,
exactly.
and before that, Selectric typewriters that
And
get turned into
printers and
printers. That's right,
everything.
yes.
Well, 3D printers actually take a design that's created on a computer and they print it, but they don't print it in a typical way.
Because printing is two-dimensional.
That's what we've come to learn.
Right.
Okay? That's changing.
Exactly.
And 3D printing is, I'm sure you've used a glue gun, like a hot glue gun.
Not often, but I know what they are.
Basically, it's a hot nozzle with a stick of glue, solid glue, that when the glue gets hot, it turns to liquid.
Okay.
And then you can glue things with it.
Right.
When it cools down, it adheres.
It hardens,
right?
yes.
The same type of thing happens with a 3D printer.
Okay.
It uses a hot nozzle and some material, plastic material, that is fed through this nozzle.
Right.
And you have a computer that controls how the nozzle moves back and forth.
Right.
And what it does is it takes, and you're right, I did bring an example here. This is a little gear, a little wheel.
Right.
It's actually a Rotary symbol, the Rotary International.
And you're in the Rotary, and so am I.
I'm in the Rotary Club.
Right.
And this device was actually, or this gear is the symbol of the Rotary Club. And there was a student at the Westport Library here that now has 3 3D printers who created this for a gentleman who last week was celebrated for his service to the community. But this is a piece of plastic. It's, as you can see, it's hard. And it was created right on the 3D printer. And you might say, well, why do you need one of those? Well, we're finding things are changing very dramatically. And there are a lot of times when people have broken apart on their vacuum cleaner, on their camera, on their cell phone, things like that. Or they just want to buy something where in the not too distant future, when you want these things, you will, instead of ordering them online, you'll be able to go to a website and say, I want that iPhone case, for example.
Right.
They'll then send you the specification for it, the file, and you can output it at your home right then and there.
So not only is this hard, but it also obviously has the third dimension. It is in fact 3D, and you can't see this, but I can. It says on the top, Westport Sunrise Rotary, and so it's actually written with raised lettering on top of what this is, and it looks like a little gear. So it's a very nice little representation of the Rotary symbol.
Right. Let me tell you about a couple of other devices that people are making that are quite intriguing to me. One is, from Thingiverse, you can download a whistle, like a sports whistle, like a coach would use.
Right.
And in that whistle, there's a little ball.
Yes.
That goes around.
Yes. How do they do that?
Well, the 3D printer actually can print a whistle that has the ball inside the whistle.
Okay.
You kind of have to see how it does it, but it's amazing.
You would think that the ball would stick to the inside and it wouldn't run around, You do
actually have to put your finger, like a pencil in and break it loose to get it to fly around.
All right, so in the middle of it, you have to intervene.
When it's all done, actually.
Okay.
When the whistle is all printed. But another thing that I think is fascinating is you can get a series of interlocking chain links.
Okay.
You can actually make a bracelet that's made out of plastic,
Right.
but it's still a chain.
Okay.
And it's not, you don't have to open up the links and connect it. The chain, all the pieces are interlocked coming out of the printer,
Okay.
which is just fascinating that A, you can do it,
Right.
and B, to actually see it happen.
So 3D printers are on their way.
Very much so.
And what would it cost today if you had a 3D printer, and what could you really do with it other than play and make little things like these?
Well, good question. First of all, for the cost, you can now get a kit for a 3D printer as low as $400. Okay?
And so you put it together yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. And in your world, that's what you would like to do, I'm sure.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean, you got
for those of us who are consumers, maybe not so much.
And for those that are consumers, you can actually now buy a pre-made, pre-configured, pre-built, literally plug-and-play 3D printer for under $2,000.
Okay.
By the time you add some accessories and things like that, you end up with something a little under $3,000. Still not for every home.
No.
But certainly not the $50,000 or $100,000 or $1 million that they used to be even a few years ago.
Right.
Okay. And what would you do with that? Well,
good question.
And right now, to a great extent, they are still toys.
Yeah.
They're still experimental things.
Okay.
Much like PCs were when they first came out. You remember the first PCs they came out? Why would you have a PC in your home?
I do.
I'll do my finances on it. I'll put my recipes on it.
Right. Right.
It's a stretch.
And it was like $3,000 or $4,000 for. I remember getting a PC early in one of my workplaces that had 20 megabytes of memory, and that was a big one. So
exactly.
Those days are gone.
And now you can't imagine a home without a PC.
You can't imagine your pocket without one. You walk around with it, a whole lot more computing power in your iPhone than anything that was ever available 20 years ago.
Precisely. So what will a home in the future do with it? I think a lot of it will be, as we buy products, instead of having to have UPS or FedEx deliver them to us in 3 or 4 days, we'll be able to make it ourselves.
So don't buy that stock.
Well, I don't think they're going to be hurt too much by this, but you think of a manufacturer. Let's have a manufacturer of cameras or tools or parts for like a refrigerator or a washing machine.
Right.
Okay. You now no longer have to inventory those things. You don't have to manufacture 10,000 spare parts, keep them in a warehouse somewhere until somebody needs them.
So how long would it take to make a part? Let's say that this was, for my vacuum cleaner.
Right.
It's about the size of something that could fall off of my vacuum cleaner. How long would it take to make this if I had the 3D printer, if I knew what I was doing, and I had all the materials and the design?
About 45 minutes. And that's going to that time is going to condense as the printers get faster and better.
Right. And how quickly how's that changed over the last year or two? I mean, is the technology rapidly improving, or are we still sort of getting there?
Yeah, what we're finding is there are 2 or 3 major types of technologies. This one uses a plastic with a little wire that gets melted. There are some that actually use light and kind of essentially a bowl of liquid that use lasers to actually solidify the plastic, and the device is actually withdrawn from the bowl. It's a whole different type of a process.
That's cool.
It is very cool. But what you find is that what we're seeing changing the most is the price of these devices. The cost is coming way down.
Sure.
5 years ago, if you could get a 3D printer, it would have set you back probably $50,000. Okay. Now you can get one for under $2,000 and the kit for $400.
Right.
Okay. That's a huge.
That's amazing.
Right. And the speed is not so much the component. By the way, you asked what other people can do with these things. There's actually a man at the Westport Library. He's not at the library, but he's using the printers at the library to make a prototype of a product he's creating. And instead of actually having to go out and have a manufacturer fabricate this box, is what he's making, essentially, he can actually make it at the library in an hour.
Okay.
He can then package it, put his things in. He said, well, that's really not the design I need. Let me change this design. And so instead of spending thousands of dollars for every iteration, he can design this on his home computer, take the design to the 3D printer at the library and make the new one. Say, is this one better?
And the Westport Library now has 3 of these, is that right?
That is correct. They have 3.
And they're available to anyone who wants to use them?
That's correct. They're free and open for anyone who wants to use it. There are a number of students that are there who are volunteering their time to help people learn how to do it. They're not there to do it for them, but they are there to say, well, here's the kind of graphics program you need to use, here's the type of a file you have to do. And like I said, this inventor, for example, went in there, learned that, and now he's able to do the work himself, and he brings in a little memory stick, and he can pop it into the 3D printer and print it out.
Amazing.
It is. It's to actually see it happening is, for most people that have never seen it happen, they go, I can't believe that this is happening right in front of my eyes.
Now, you had the fair last year. It was a huge success. You're doing it again this year. It's at the end of April, the 27th, is that
Saturday,
right?
April 27th, that's correct.
Okay. And who is coming this year that didn't come before? What's going to be different?
Well, that's a good question. The word has certainly spread about the event. It was a great success. We have what's called our Call for Makers, which is currently open right now. And so we are casting a wide net to see who shows up. We are planning on having a much larger event than we had last year. Last year we had a little over 60 participants that were there that were actually showing things off. And we hope to have far more than that this year. Our target is over 100.
Okay.
We actually are having more space than we had last year, and we're hoping for good weather.
Now, when you say more space, you had it outside and inside the library both last year. Is that right?
Yes. We took over with the participation of the Westport Library. We took over the entire library.
Wow.
We had a tent out on Jessup Green. It was a 60 by 120 foot tent on Jessup Green. This year we are actually adding a tent on the parking lot, which is right adjacent to Jessup Green, and we are using Tokay Hall for kind of a lecture component for that.
Wow.
We actually had a number of people, for some people that want to talk about projects that they're doing that don't really fit in a booth or something like that. For example, we had David Pogue, the New York Times technology columnist.
Is he coming back?
He's committed. He's trying to. He may have a conflict, but he's said if he's around, he will definitely be there.
Cool.
For example, last year he talked about making a television show. How do you make a television show? He's been making a Nova science technology television show. So he was talking about that, which doesn't really lend itself to a booth. So we have a lecture component to that. We had Miggs Burrows locally, who's a graphic artist and an illustrator, and he was talking about how you make things like a company logo.
Right.
And so we actually filled up the entire agenda for last year, and so we're going to be doubling the space that we have for that sort of a lecture space. Nice.
And is there a cost either to the people who are showing what they do or to the people who attend?
The event itself is free for people who want to attend. We are actually, there are various costs, there are different levels of cost, whether you're, hi, I'm Mark and I'd like to show off my thing, versus whether you are a commercial entity or things like that.
Oh, of course.
Because this is all privately funded. There's no governmental money or town funding involved in this. We also have sponsors, and we look for sponsorship. We're still selecting sponsors right now, but we're gonna do well.
Great. Well, it sounds amazing. I want to see this medieval siege machine thing. I've been reading the Game of Thrones series, so I can now sort of visualize how these things might have been used in the past. It sounds like a lot of fun. What else are you working on at this point besides this Mini Maker Faire?
Well, there are a lot of things going on. As you may know, I'm on the Board of Education,
right?
And so that obviously keeps me busy. And there's another project actually that will be new this year at the Maker Faire, which is a thing called Westport Stories, which is where we take videotapes of people that have a connection to Westport, and they tell their story. And then we're going to archive those on the internet for people to see. And again, very much like the Historical Society is doing other stories about people here in Westport.
Right.
But really, it's that trying to record the history of Connecticut and of Westport in particular. It's one thing to read about it. It's something else to have that individual tell their own story.
Who's going to be doing that for you?
There's a woman who has offered to. She actually does this for people who have cancer and for their families that do that. And she's going to be having a space where we'll try and get one of the rooms at the library so it'll be somewhat quiet, because it's a fairly noisy event.
Right.
And then we're just going to have people come in and for 5 or 10 minutes just talk about themselves or their family or their history or things like that.
So it's a StoryCorps idea that they do down in Grand Central.
That was actually the genesis of what had me think of that. And of course, StoryCorps, typically from what I understand, is all audio.
Yes.
And to me, the natural extension of that was video, to have an audio and a video, to actually hear and see the person telling their story.
Right. And so that'll be set up where? In the library? More
than likely in the library is where we're targeting, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. And there'll be, I'm sure, all the regular things. There'll be food and music and face painting and those sorts of things as well. Yeah?
Yes, we are. In fact, this year we are going to have a stage so that we can have people that are performing, people who make music, who make comedy, who make improv.
Okay.
And we didn't have that last year. So definitely be something for people to come down and enjoy the day.
Well, Mark, thanks so much. This is terrific. And this all came from your having seen one in New York and saying we can do that too.
Having seen my kids having such a good time and not realizing they were learning, yes.
Well, change is possible, and you can make it happen. Mark, you've done it. Thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. You can catch all our shows on YouTube by going to youtube.com/user/DFATVnet. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, and you can send comments or suggestions for a show to info@dfa-tv.net. If you'd like to learn more about progressive political action, we meet on the first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. at the Silver Star Diner in Norwalk. We'd love to have you join us. Remember, change is possible, and you can make it happen. This has been Stream of Conscience. I'm your host, John Hartwell. Thanks for watching.